Hello everyone, I'm here with a fantastic treat for all of you. BadEmpanada has been destroyed, he has been rebutted, he has been debunked, he has been shot to pieces, he has been turned into Soylent Green by another anti-BadEmpanada video that has hit the towers. There's been like 50 of them by now, but they're very resilient towers, okay? And I have the pleasure of informing you that this video, this one right here, is 4 hours and 24 minutes long. Incredible. So I'm very excited about this one. And the thumbnail says, "Be vicious to class traders like this guy." Now, I'm not sure which class I would be a traitor to, like Americans, the American labor aristocracy. I was never a member of that class, so I can't really be a traitor to it, though yes, I am very much against American labor aristocrats, so thank you for the compliment at least. So, I'm gonna give this 4-hour-long video a bit of a chance. I'm obviously not going to go over all of it because who the fuck wants to do that? I guarantee you that there is not literally one single person who has actually watched this video in full. It's clear who the audience is meant to be though. You know, the sort of desperate people who I refute or who try to refute me and then end up not looking so good when I respond, and who are sort of looking to get one up over me. And you can see that pretty much immediately. If you go to the comments, and you sort by new, and guess who's in there? FD Signifier praising this video. FD Signifier, of course, someone who recently participated in a live stream where he and his buddies called me a white supremacist for talking about the objective fact that Jewish supremacism is clearly, operationally, the most important form of supremacism in Israel. And I responded to his stream that was basically dedicated to attacking me on that point. And his reaction to this is to seek out anti-BadEmpanada video and leave a comment. And he literally sent the creator money. He says, "I send you a coffee though." Individual donation platform Ko-fi. So yeah, there's a certain audience for this. Deculturation, his friend, who was also a part of that live stream, is in here. It's clear, right? These people didn't actually watch the video. I would hope they didn't, because as you're going to see from the first 10 minutes or so, it's not exactly very good, but they're just desperate for like anyone saying anything bad about BadEmpanada, and this is what they got. So let's check it out. I'm not angry. I wish that they could engage. I long for content warnings. Are we still doing fucking content warnings now? This shit has absolutely evaporated from the internet, by the way. It turned out like everyone who pretended they needed a content warning, like everyone pretended they collectively had PTSD for like 5 years. And then the Gaza genocide happens and everyone just suddenly doesn't have any of that shit anymore. No one asks for content warnings anymore. It turns out that none of the people who claim they needed that stuff actually had the triggers that they had claimed to. But hey, we got it back here, right? I really do appreciate this. Let's bring back the needless content warning. Fucking argument with these people. I want to talk about evidence and facts and things that actually matter. And all that they do is like, they construct a straw man that's not based on anything you've ever actually said. And then they throw out homonyms at it and just scream that anti-Semitic. Whoa, you said that Nebula is like very curiously full of creators, co-founders, who just don't talk about anything of importance. Oh, that's like, who is this supposed to even make sense to? Like the average person clicking a YouTube video isn't going to know what Nebula is or why someone was saying it's an anti-Semitic dog whistle or whatever. Like, you need like deep lore of the BadEmpanada live YouTube channel to understand the context for the second half of what I'm saying here. And obviously the implication here is that she is responding to me and finally giving me facts and evidence to debunk me. So, yeah, let's check it out. I can't wait. An anti-Semitic dog whistle. I'm tired. I'm not angry. I'm just fucking tired. Skylar Sakura Sabo. Hello, everyone. I'm named after Elder Scrolls video game sex mod character, and I'm here to present you with an over-edited 4-hour-long video about BadEmpanada, where I present him with funny colors and edit in funny meme quips every 5 seconds. Because people don't engage. Check out the music and the editing, folks. For an argument from BadEmpanada is the anti-imperialist who misses the point. Let's skip through their incredible sick music intro. Wait, hold on. Why is there just a picture of them on the screen? What is this? I think it would be better off to just have a voiceover. I think I think your video would be better off without an inanimate picture of you on the screen when you're speaking. You know, a voiceover is a pretty well-established form of visual communication. We don't need the visual indication of when it is you who are speaking. I think we can tell. But anyway.
I, parasocially, respected him.
Okay, so we can tell immediately from the accent that it's an American and or a Canadian. They're the same thing. So I can already tell you precisely where this is coming from.
As a YouTuber.
I make the Americans uncomfortable, and the entire video is just going to be a complaint in that vein.
In 2019, I first encountered him as a guest on a podcast series called Socialist Sunday Stream, hosted by my good friend Javi. I actually appeared on a different episode than he did, but my first impression of him was positive. I valued what he had to say about Latin American politics, and I subscribed to his channel in hopes of learning more.
We have like random clips of me. Let's get to the actual points.
But I'm getting ahead of myself.
I'm not interested in the backhanded praise. I'm interested in the actual rebuttals.
BadEmpanada is one of the few bold anti-imperialist voices on the internet.
You don't think that?
Even among breadtubers, where it is dominated by privileged, rad-libby brats like ContraPoint.
Okay, this is being said with a sarcastic tone. I'm pretty fucking obvious. She doesn't actually believe it.
Whose material struggle amounts to whether or not the haters are too loud. But he does have a few caveats. Like any other critical thinker, his political commentary is rather unorthodox, even among other anti-imperialists. He's kind of an oddball in a way.
You should join ICE. Is it? My political commentary isn't at all unorthodox unless you've never been exposed to anything outside of the United States of America. Talk to basically any well-read, experienced anti-imperialist who does like any sort of beyond surface level political analysis outside of the imperial core, and they will sound very much like me. They have incredibly similar beliefs and positions to me, if not, in many cases, just outright the same sorts of beliefs. So again, we're coming at this from an American, first worldist left perspective. You should absolutely join ICE. You should become an ICE agent as soon as possible. If you're American, you're able to become an ICE agent, you should do it.
As you can see, he has a bit of a sense of humor that doesn't exactly translate to tasteful, especially when considering that he positions himself as an anti-imperialist. He'll often make
as an anti-imperialist
remarks that are similar to that of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
You might be poor, right? You might be disadvantaged. You might be struggling. You might desperately need a job. You might just want to feed your family. You might just want healthcare. You might even be an LGBT, POC, minority Latino who is disadvantaged and you're intersectional. You have intersectional identity categories.
In too many cities.
Oh my God. The video begins with her taking 100% at face value a clip of me comparing joining ICE to American leftists like her, justifying people joining the American military. The immediate, first thing that she chose to go with in this video is her flagrantly misunderstanding the point of a video that is explicitly me comparing people joining the military, the US military, to joining ICE, and saying to people who defend joining the US military, hey, these two things are the same. They're actually not the same. Joining the military is a lot worse, but hey. And it doesn't make any sense that you defend people who join the military, you make excuses for them, yet you hate ICE agents so much on such a personal level. So you begin by flagrantly missing the point that's being made in this video and being like, oh my God, he sounds just like this ICE recruitment ad. Yes, that's literally the point. I was listing the justifications that people use for joining the US military, but turning it around and saying they should join ICE to point out these contradictory positions that American supposed left-wing chauvinists have, where they are able to justify people joining the US military to victimize people in other countries, but they suddenly think it's bad when people join ICE to victimize people in their own country. Oh my fucking God.
Dangerous illegals walk free as police are forced to stand down.
A really great way. I should have said that. I should have said that verbatim. It would have made the point even better. To get ahead would be for you to become an ICE agent because it's so easy to get in.
Join ICE. And
ICE join. Yes.
Catch the.
This is literally the fucking point. You sound like this when you justify people joining the U.S. military. You sound like this
Worst
ad.
of the worst, with bonuses up to $50,000 and generous benefits.
Exactly. And they offer $50,000 in generous benefits. That's the fucking point being made. People justify joining the US military on the basis that they gain financial benefits from it, right? And I was making that exact same fucking argument here. And your immediate proof of the evil of BadEmpanada is you showing this, but playing it straight-faced. Playing it as if I'm actually telling people to join ICE for real. So this is either one, a willing and purposeful attempt to mislead people, or she's just extremely stupid. Take your pick. Either way, the effect is the same. Insane benefits. Like I just Googled right now, ICE join Gov. And the first results is from the ICE website, America needs you.
Apply now. Join.ice.gov.
America needs me. That sounds useful.
BadEmpanada and I are both YouTubers who definitely take pride in our content. To make a video to varying degrees, it requires a lot of work, ranging from research, script writing, filming, recording, editing, and even the process of uploading said video can be an arduous task. Needless to say, when we make videos, it requires a lot of time and energy. There is a certain amount of intent that
I'm zooming in on my face because I think I'm making a good point here, apparently. So there is a certain amount of intent
goes behind it.
that goes behind it. I want you to remember that for this like blatant, probably intentional mischaracterization that leads the video. There is a certain amount of intent that goes behind it. Okay? I want you to compare that, what I just said, with this clip from the Majority Report.
Even his Blackwater stint, we were talking a little bit off air. Is this not common, Brian, with people who don't have, are like trying to find work after being in the military?
Specifically the infantry. I mean, what you got to understand is that you don't have much of a job skill when you leave the infantry. And so if you're trying to make money and you're getting that's such an easy pipeline because, like, what else are you going to do?
That's a great point. Like, it's such an easy pipeline. You don't have money. So what else are you going to do except join ICE, right? And that makes you not responsible for your own actions. I completely agree. Just join ICE. It's not a huge deal. It's not your fault what you do. It's not your fault what happens. I actually think it's kind of privileged to be against people joining ICE. I completely agree with this assessment.
Stop my advocacy, and I will continue doing it. But goddamn, some of you fucking dumbasses.
So now 5 minutes in, after spending the first 5 minutes just straight-faced, playing all of those clips with no disclaimer, finally we have some sort of indication here that what I was saying there was to make a point, though there is not really any sort of explanation of the point. Like, you could have just, if you had to include this, which doesn't really make much sense, because I would hope you fucking agree with this, what could possibly be the point of you showing this in the very first 5 minutes of your video? Like, this is what you specifically chose to lead with. You intentionally chose to lead with, unless you thought there was something wrong with it. If you actually agreed with it, why would you show it?
Is really need to just rein it in, dude. It's so ridiculous. It's so privileged in many ways where we're just like, listen, I didn't go through these experiences, so I'm obviously morally infallible as opposed to this fucking guy, And before any number of you dipshits turn around and cynically try to tell me, what do you think Iraqi feels about this? You already know my position on this, okay? You're not from there. You're from America. You live in fucking Connecticut, okay? In your father's McMansion. Shut the fuck up.
I completely agree. I completely agree with everything this man just said. In my opinion, it's privileged to not join ICE. You haven't had the experiences that an ICE agent has had. What are you doing, cynically telling me that I should care about the opinion of some El Salvadorian migrant? Shut the fuck up. You're not an El Salvadorian migrant. You're privileged. You live in your father's McMansion in Connecticut. You can't judge people who join ICE. They needed the money. They were in poverty. They didn't know any better. They were propagandized.
Now, even in granting him the benefit of the doubt that he is making a sarcastic jab at Americans who join ICE to gain benefits from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
So that's what she thought was happening in that clip. She thought that I was mocking people who join ICE. That's her interpretation of it, even though she actually specifically showed the parts where I explicitly compare it to others making those same justifications for joining the US military. Oh boy, this is not a great start. Just immediately showing that you fail to understand incredibly obvious points. And that's the lead to your video. Oh no.
As an anti-imperialist, this is rather mocking to the very people who are being separated from their families simply for the crime of being brown.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this guy's making me really uncomfortable.
That's amazing. The thesis of the very first thing they chose to showcase is basically what that woman there said. This makes me uncomfortable. You're confronting Americans who callously justify and defend people who join the US military by turning their exact same rhetoric around on them and theirs. This is rather mocking. You shouldn't be allowed to say that. Why would you say that? How dare you say that? It's too confronting for me. I don't care if it's too confronting for you. I don't give a fuck. And I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt to people on whose behalf you claim that you're being offended, that they might understand the comparison being made there, and that I don't actually think that you should join ICE.
I don't know, he's like big and brown.
The very institution which he is making light of is throwing innocent people into concentration camps.
Yeah, that's the fucking point. That's the fucking point. To compare the fucking US military to this so that Americans understand that joining the US military is at least as bad as joining ICE. And that it's illogical for them to support this while posting things, such as what, for example, Hassan Piker said. He's a good person to showcase because I responded to him in the video, the clip from the video that was shown there. Hassan Piker posted about ICE agents saying, we must not just abolish ICE, we must also punish ICE. But his position on the American military is, I don't give a fuck. I support these American unrepentant military veterans who, I even support them like running for Senate and Congress and such. It's illogical, it's nonsensical, it's inconsistent.
There are reports of detained people either getting raped or completely disappearing off the record entirely.
Okay, and? Do you understand? That's the fucking entire point of what I'm saying. The US military commits mass rape, commits genocide, commits mass murder, totally destroys other countries, which results in masses of social murder over the decades that follow. If anything, by comparing ICE to the US military, I'm downplaying that. Because joining ICE is a whole lot less bad than joining the US military, actually. The degrees of harm that they do aren't even really on the same planet. But nonetheless, the only way that Americans like you can get it is if you make a comparison like this. But maybe I'm thinking too much of you. Maybe I thought too much of your capabilities because you clearly didn't get it. Now you're just like, he was making light of ICE and ICE is bad. And here's clips of like people testifying to crimes that ICE has committed, right? Yeah, that's the entire point of what I'm saying. That what your military does is the same as this, so you shouldn't justify people joining it and defend them for joining it. This is the beginning of the video. It started with this. She plays literally like a 3-minute long clip of a Democracy Now! Clip of someone noting like rape that happened at an ICE facility. And the implication is obviously that I am somehow in favor of this. Like, look at this shit. The implication is that I am making light of ICE. I am like somehow supporting ICE, and thus I am somehow responsible, supportive, or otherwise in favor of this.
Person who is listed as the contact person or is the contact person at like a site where he's supposed to be kept, but we don't even know whether that person is the right individual.
There was even a case where one person was hung by his neck and found dead.
That's my mom and that's him.
Frozen in a photograph inside his Dorchester home, the last Christmas President Nelson says he'll ever spend with his brother.
And? What's your point? I'd love to see the point.
Tells us Thomas was eventually taken to the hospital, where the next day, his brother was suddenly on life support with pneumonia.
You're able to become an ICE agent, you should do it.
ICE is basically killing people who are clearly victims of oppression to begin with, so I want to make this very clear. Whether or not he is joking is irrelevant. At the end of the day, he is using his platform, pretending to advocate for the anti-imperialist cause, while also making a complete mockery of actual victims of imperialism.
The actual victims of imperialism understand fucking perfectly what I'm saying there. Because they have been raped, pillaged, murdered by the US military. And to them, it also doesn't make fucking sense that so many Americans who claim to be on the left, who claim to be anti-imperialist, can say, like what Hassan Piker said there, punish ICE. But when it comes to American military veterans, it's all about forgiveness and restitution and accepting them back into the fold.
Whether he realizes it or not. But here's the thing that really drove me to make this video. He often criticizes other breadtubers for not making their content with the message of international solidarity. He views online leftist creators as explicitly invested in American struggles only. And to some degree, he's correct when it comes.
Wait, your example of that was Philosophy Tube? Okay.
He views online leftist creators as explicitly invested in American struggles only. And to some degree, he's correct.
Philosophy Tube is British. Philosophy Tube isn't American. Philosophy Tube is British. Come on. Come on. I beg you. I didn't even have much of a problem with Philosophy Tube's content. I think my assessment of it before she completely butchered her tiptoey statement regarding the Gaza genocide was just edutainment philosophy slop, a lot of which is wrong, but a lot of which is rather inoffensive. She's not the sort of person I ever would have really expected to have talked about imperialism. The point is rather that when she did it really badly.
Correct. When it comes to people glazing Graham Plattner, he's correct to highlight the hypocrisy of their support for...
That's literally what you just showed, is a clip of me highlighting the hypocrisy of their support for Graham Plattner by drawing attention to the contradictions and the arguments that they use to argue for joining the US military and why it's fine for you to do so, and turning those around on ICE, which they think it's wrong for you to join.
An unprincipled progressive who participated in the war on terror, even though in his teen years he protested the war on terror.
And before any number of you dipshits turn around and cynically try to tell me, what do you think Iraqi feels about this? You already know my position on this, okay? You're not from there. You're from America. You live in fucking Connecticut, okay?
This is where BadEmpanada's political critiques shine.
But what is important is how they react. But you just showed me engaging in one of those critiques, and you denounced it on the basis that it's offensive to a group of people who you've not demonstrated any evidence that they are offended by it, nor would I stop myself from making a comparison like that, which is apt and extremely efficient at drawing attention to the contradictions in these arguments that specifically enable people participating in American imperialism, justify people literally joining the fucking US military to go on mass murder. I would not neuter my own message out of concern that it might offend some people. And I quite frankly do not give a single shit at your implication that I should somehow neuter it just for that reason, because you have a suspicion that some people might be offended by it. Anyway, so this video, again, it's 4 hours long, and I've already been here way too fucking long for the first 10 minutes. So I'm gonna scan through it and see if there's at least 2 or 3 points which are perhaps worth responding to here. Okay. There's a claim in here that I am apparently a racist because I didn't mention a specific American pro-Palestine activist. Okay, I can't wait to see this.
Speaking of Amazon, Chris Smalls, who is the president of the Amazon Union, was on board the flotilla that was sending food and aid across the Mediterranean Sea. His boat was abducted by the Israeli military, and they were severely abused during their detainment. This happened...
Okay, so the point that she's trying to make here is that me saying that American unions are imperialist is wrong. And as an example of this, she's pointing to exceptions to the rule as if this proves me wrong. But they obviously don't. You can't just point to people who are clearly outside of the norm, like, what's his name? Chris Smalls, and then use those people as examples of how I'm wrong on my claim that American unions and imperial core unions in general drift towards serving imperialism more often than not, because he is an exception to that. I could make a million different analogies here as to how this doesn't make any sense. But I think it's pretty self-evident, right? The argument being made there is, you said that American unions are imperialist? Well, that must mean that you also hate this one guy who's a leader of an American union who isn't an imperialist and who went on the flotilla to Gaza. It's an extremely stupid straw man. It's like finding the 5 Israelis who are genuine anti-Zionists and pointing to them as an example for why you can't talk about this society-wide genocidal rot in Israel. Or pointing to Oskar Schindler and saying, you said that all Nazis are bastards. Well, look at that guy. He saved a bunch of Jews. He was a Nazi party member. Now, obviously, being an American in a union isn't quite as bad as being an Israeli Zionist or being a Nazi, but you get the point, right? Unable to actually deal with my argument on unions and how and why they serve imperialism in imperial core nations. It's just this moralism, like pointing to a minority of individuals who are an exception and saying, gotcha, I bet you hate those people. When in actual fact, if the entire American, Western, organized labor movement was like these people, I never would have complained about them in the first place. But unfortunately, there's a reason why it's not. And that's the entire thesis of my video on this topic. That it is within the material interests of first world workers, particularly first world workers in the richest imperial core countries, like the US, to advocate for their own interests and not to rock the boat too much for anyone else, because they just don't get anything out of it. It makes perfect sense. But this fact, this very basic demonstrable material fact, is painted as like some sort of moralistic denouncement of every single individual in a union. Ergo, I must hate Chris Smalls, like the Amazon union leader who went on the flotilla. And trust me, it gets even worse.
Been 2 months before BadEmpanada made its own anti-union video. However, BadEmpanada made a separate video praising Greta Thunberg and her efforts on the June 2025 Gaza Freedom Flotilla. Here are a couple good pictures of Chris Smalls and Greta Thunberg. Do you notice anything? Does anyone in my audience want to take a guess as to why BadEmpanada wouldn't praise Chris Smalls, but he would give a standing praise to Greta Thunberg? I'm not gonna.
Yeah, this about summarizes what we're dealing with here. So if you haven't heard of Chris Smalls, if you don't know who this one American union leader is, but you do know who Greta Thunberg is, you know, Greta Thunberg, literally a world-famous activist who has been world-famous for at least a decade now, and you make a video praising Greta Thunberg, but you don't make a video praising Chris Smalls, the leader of the Amazon Union, the American Amazon Union. There's only one possible reason for that. There's only one possible reason for that. It's because he's black. There's literally no other possible reason. None. No possible reason aside from that. Oh my fucking Christ. This is the caliber of opponent who I've been gifted. I mean, it makes sense because when you're wrong, you generally have to resort to incredibly dumb shit like this. Now, check out the argument that she follows this up with.
BadEmpanada wants you to put a microscope on 4 AFL-CIO maritime unions for demanding that union workers be the ones to extract oil from Venezuela.
They proved my thesis, as well as you could ever imagine. Maritime labor unions call for US flag shipping requirement on Venezuelan oil imports. That's 4 of the most significant American maritime workers' unions.
Now again, I'm not saying we shouldn't hold these unions accountable. It is disgusting that unionized laborers are lacking international solidarity while Donald Trump engages in Western expansionist terrorism. However, both Chris Smalls and Greta Thunberg have faced abuse by the Israeli military for their convictions.
What the fuck point is even being made there? She's like, you're putting a microscope on 4 AFL-CIO maritime unions, like 4 of the most important maritime unions in the USA that are members of the AFL-CIO. That is the most important union umbrella organization, organized labor umbrella organization in the USA. And I'm the one who's putting a microscope on them. Well, she is bringing up Chris Smalls, one single individual, as her counterexample to my argument. Funnily enough, I'm the one who's actually focusing on things on a much more systemic level. I'm talking about unions, big unions, huge unions, unions that reflect the character of the broader labor movement in the US, all aside from a tiny minority of unions are pretty much all like this. And her response to that is to accuse me of putting a microscope on a few limited exceptions while she brings up one single guy as her counterexample. So there's no structural argument here about the character of American unions and how and why they are the way they are. It's just basically pure individualist moralism. Oh, you think American unions are bad? How dare you insult Chris Smalls? He's a good guy and he's an American union leader. Now, to be clear here about Chris Smalls' Amazon union, he's not actually the leader of like the Amazon union. There isn't actually an Amazon union. There is rather one Amazon union that is incorporating the workers from one warehouse, and that's what he is the union leader of. So we're talking about the leader of a union that represents the workers from one single Amazon warehouse. Just the leader, right? And we're comparing that to the fucking AFL-CIO. Which one of these two do you think is more representative of the broader character of the broader systemic character of the American union movement? Like, come on, this is just such a dumb little argument. Basically, her argument here is to find exceptions to the rule, point to them, and then look at you like this.
It seems that his admiration for activists is extremely selective and privileged in a way that is inconsistent with his beliefs.
What kind of an argument is this? If you praise this one person, you must also necessarily balance that out with the praise for this other person, and they have to be black. Otherwise, you're a racist. What the fuck, man?
Thunberg, as badass as she is practically a celebrity. This is like if BadEmpanada praised Miley Cyrus for throwing a Molotov cocktail at a cop while ignoring the revolutionary impact of Ashada Shakur. Because as we've seen with the numerous university protests across the United States,
This is just idiotic moralism. It's like, I don't like who BadEmpanada made a video defending. Like, I made that video to defend Greta Thunberg because everyone was like shitting on her at the time. Well, everyone being a lot of people. And saying that like she was just doing it for the publicity, for the like to go on a cruise or whatever. That's why I made that fucking video. Specifically in that moment, because people were saying that about her. It's extremely selective and privileged in a way. It's just like a list of people who I should have singled out and praised. And all of them are Americans. Basically, this entire video is just complaining that I don't say enough nice things about Americans.
States and the world, for that matter, trying to get their institutions to divest from Israel through the coordination of the student unions. We've witnessed students losing their ability to graduate, even having their degrees revoked from them in some cases.
What the fuck does this have to do with anything? How dare you make a video saying that people should stop saying bad things about Greta Thunberg? Mahmoud Khalil was detained by ICE. What the fuck are you talking about?
Mahmoud Khalil was detained by ICE, then freed, and now, as of making this video, has been re-arrested, with him likely going to be deported to Algeria, tragically leaving behind his wife and newborn. These are people in which BadEmpanada is mocking when he makes joking statements about how unions support imperialism.
What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not joking, by the way. American unions do support imperialism. They factually do. None of it was a joke. What are you fucking talking about? How you brought up students at Columbia University, and that's your example of the American labor union opposing imperialism. Mahmoud Khalil. Is Mahmoud Khalil even a unionized worker? Is he a union leader? So if you talk about the systematic nature of first world unions and about how they are specifically narrowly focused, as all unions are, on getting the best benefits possible for their workers, sometimes not even that, but it's theoretically what they should be for, and that this leads them to support imperialism, as the AFL-CIO example very much shows, you are attacking Mahmoud Khalil and the students who protested at Columbia University. It's all just, how dare you say this thing that is true, because there are a few people who are members of unions who are anti-imperialists. Because you can't actually deal with the fucking point. You can't actually deal with the evidence for the point. It's just, oh, but you said unions are bad. You're making a moralistic attack on these couple of individuals who are members of unions. Oh my fucking God, man. Oh, it's so painful.
No solidarity, no raising awareness of how people's lives have been severely impacted negatively.
Okay, I don't think Americans in America need my help. I don't think they need my solidarity, whatever the fuck that means. They don't need me raising awareness. They don't need me making a little token video saying, look at this thing that is widely being reported in the international media that everyone already fucking knows about, that every American's already talking about. You need me to talk about it as well? The complaint is literally, he doesn't have enough solidarity with Americans. He doesn't care enough about Americans. He doesn't shine enough of a light on our struggles. The fucking Americans, the marginalized Americans.
Working class activists are just props to him. Like this video called, Israel Definitely Didn't Kill Charlie Kirk.
So in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, not sure what to think, honestly, there has been a lot of very weird theories and stuff, some of which seem more sensible than others.
Yes, folks. We're dealing with some skibbity toilet level brain rot.
Why is that skibbity toilet level brain rot? What did what I say there? Like, what was bad about that as an intro to that video? So in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, I'm not sure what to think. There's been some weird theories, some of which are more sensible than others. This is some skibbity toilet level brain rot? What the fuck are you talking about? How is anything that I said there brain rot? What the hell?
And in this video, he makes a joke about being fired from Dairy Queen.
I'm not going to comment on what I think actually happened, because I'm commenting on Charlie Kirk. Gets you in a lot of trouble these days. I might get fired from my job. I might get reported to Dairy Queen, where I work.
Now, I know that Dairy Queen is the stop sign of Texas, but people who work at Dairy Queen are just trying to get by. What would be the alternative here? That a worker at Dairy Queen sees the damage that Charlie Kirk has caused on society and for them to remain silent?
What the holy fuck are you talking about? How did you possibly get from that I support people being fired from Dairy Queen for saying mean things about Charlie Kirk? That was a joke. Tyler Robinson, the guy who supposedly killed Charlie Kirk, was it him? I don't know. Perhaps he's innocent. Went to Dairy Queen after he killed Charlie Kirk. Or maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I haven't actually looked into whether it was real or not. I honestly don't give a shit, because that's what I was referring to. And I blended this with the fact that people were factually being fired to make a joke about that. And you get from that like, oh, how could you possibly offend these people who were fired? What? Like if I had made a quip saying, oh, I shouldn't say this bad thing about Israel because the ADL might come after me, and your reaction to that was to say, oh my God, I can't fucking believe it. He's mocking people who've been hunted down and ended up getting fired from their jobs by the ADL. What should they have done? Just stayed quiet about the crimes of Israel? That's the exact one-to-one analogy for what you're accusing me of here, and it does not make any fucking sense. How does me mocking the ridiculousness of people getting fired for making jokes about Charlie Kirk? How do you get from that to saying that I think the people who got fired for making jokes about Charlie Kirk should have stayed quiet about it? What the fuck are you talking about?
Meanwhile, how many videos have BadEmpanada made on Charlie Kirk? Okay, he's released a video
Probably like 3 or 4.
called Charlie Kirk Psychosis is Ridiculous.
I said I would not talk more about Charlie Kirk. Okay, that's an epic meme. Because it legitimately should not be such a big news item.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying?
What the fuck? What?
Oh my God. Stop fucking lying.
That's weird, because he has so many other videos talking about Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk killed. Charlie Kirk destroys unpatriotic liberal traitor facts versus feelings. The rise of Charlie Kirk proves none of this matters. Did Israel kill Charlie Kirk?
So, before Charlie Kirk died, we have 2 videos that I ever made about him in 5 or 6 years. Or however long it was since I started making videos on my second channel. One of which is just a reaction to like a campus debate that Charlie Kirk was in. And then, literally 4 years after that, I made one single video about how Charlie Kirk had become quite prominent since then. And then it turned out that I was wrong because he got fucking killed, so he's not actually going to be the president. And then after he was killed, and this is proof of me lying, I made 2 or 3 videos about that. So in total, how many videos is that about Charlie Kirk? Out of, what, like 2,000?
Israel definitely didn't kill Charlie Kirk.
You know, this is someone who makes videos about like pop culture, anime, bullshit like that.
Breaker you, Charlie Kirk, and Iraq War videos break my brain. I'm sure they did, buddy, and I think they broke your brain so badly that they have...
What is the point being made there? Once BadEmpanada said that he didn't want to make more videos about Charlie Kirk, but then he ended up making more videos about Charlie Kirk anyway. Okay, what exactly is the point being made there? I mean, if you want to demonstrate that I'm supposedly a liar, I feel like that must have been the weakest way to ever do it. Okay, what else have we got here? Anything else interesting? I've already been recording here for about a fucking hour. I don't know how long this is going to be once I edit it down, but I'm already at the limit of the level of attention that I want to pay to whatever the fuck this video is. So we have an attempted debunking of Jewish exceptionalism here. Let's check that out. That is at least something that we might get like a potential teaching moment from. So this seems like a fair enough starting point for their argument here.
Jewish people are not explicitly European. Semitic refers to peoples from a family of languages. Jews are a religious people group, and Zionism is a political ideology based in settler colonial violence. Through imperialist propaganda, these 3 things are often conflated, but
firstly, the Semitic thing is just a very dumb talking point. I made a video about this where it's just a dictionary definition, like anti-Semitism. It's not something that's worth getting angry about. I hate this anti-Zionist argument, and basically what I said here is this thing about who are the real Semites? Are Arabs also Semites? who cares? It doesn't really matter. The term anti-Semitism is just the generic term that we now use for anti-Jewish racism or anti-Jewish whatever you want. It's a very dumb semantic thing, and I don't think that people using that term explicitly means that they are the, these or that or those people are the real Semites or whatever. I don't think there is a virtue in being Semitic or not, and I think it's just kind of a waste of fucking time to worry about semantics like this. And then she says that Jews are a religious people group, and Zionism is a political ideology based in settler colonial violence. Now, Jews are not simply a religious people group. The notion of a Jew has very clearly been racialized and ethnicized for an extremely long time. It's been racialized since at least the 19th century and ethnicized for long before that. So while the concepts of race and ethnicity are obviously bullshit, the fact of the matter is, basically every other racial and ethnic categorization is stupid anyway. An ethnicity can be whatever enough people think is an ethnicity. A race can be whatever enough people think is a race. What matters is how these concepts are operationalized way more than anything else. And in the case of Israel and really Jews in general, it's not simply religious for them. It's just as ethnic/racial. In fact, most Jews in the world are not religious. For them, it's not a religious thing at all, okay? So what else have you got to say here?
They are not interchangeable. These words have meaning, and we need to be mindful of that. We can split hairs all day about how Hebrew then and now are not the same in origin. We can claim that the movement that comprised of Zionism has nothing to do with Semitic peoples. We can even claim that the nation-state of Israel is an actual Nazi state and function. But one thing that we must recognize before we continue this conversation is that the Israeli identity is not synonymous with the Jewish identity.
One thing that you should recognize before we continue the conversation is that this doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter to being pro-Palestinian whether the Jewish identity is the same as the Israeli identity or whatever. There is no inherent virtue in being Jewish or in Judaism. There is nothing special about that. The claim here is about as profound as saying, but one thing we must recognize before we continue the conversation is that the white identity is not synonymous with the American identity. Like, okay, and the USA was still a white supremacist state with on-the-books laws privileging whites that were supported in this by the vast majority of whites in the US, like literally 95% plus minimum, I'd say. Israel is the same, but for Jews. And it would be incredibly stupid and really just a red herring to bring that up in the case of the US, as if it matters at all, as if it's something that we should at all be thinking about or concerned with, as if it changes anything about the equation for us. But it doesn't. And Israel is the same. But, hey, Jewish exceptionalism. So it's incredibly important that we worry a whole lot about defending the Jewish identity or whatever as in equivalent circumstances to defending the white identity in the US context. It's just nonsensical.
Because let's rip the band-aid off. Israel wants you to associate its nationalist image with Judaism. I mean, it's literally that nation-state's modus operandi. Its very attempt at legitimacy weighs solely on the idea that it is the Jewish state.
Okay, so simple fact here. This idea only has any power over you if you think that there is some sort of unique and special virtue to being Jewish that other groups of people don't have. You know, if someone told you that some group somewhere deserved to have an ethno-state because it was the ethno-state of this specific group, and that makes it special, I would think that the reaction of the average person would be, I don't fucking care, that's still wrong. There's nothing special about your ethnic group that legitimizes that notion to me, that you appealing to it and you supposedly being its ordained representatives would ever even change anything about that equation for me. But in the case of Israel, for people like this, it really is a huge deal. For them, there is something legitimizing about people who are Jewish wanting something, and so for them to give themselves the permission to be against Israel, they have to deal with this cognitive dissonance. And thus, when they hear this claim being made that Israel is the Jewish state and there's something about it being Jewish that legitimizes it, their response, no, it's not actually Jewish, it actually doesn't represent Jews, how dare you say that, rather than shrugging your shoulders and saying, okay, I don't give a fuck. It doesn't matter who the state is for. There's nothing inherently legitimizing about being Jewish. So the way that you fight this talking point from Israel is that you respond saying, I don't fucking care. That doesn't matter. And you know why that's actually very important? Because most Jews do actually support Israel, because most Jews are actually Zionists. But someone like this has to deny that fact, right? To give themselves permission to be against Israel, to deal with this cognitive dissonance in their head, this notion that there's something special about Jews that has, ironically, been drilled into their head specifically as a form of Zionist propaganda for decades upon decades, in which they are unwilling to question because they're so emotionally attached to that notion. To deal with the cognitive dissonance between Jews are special, there's something special about them that is uniquely legitimizing, and Israel is this genocidal settler colonial state that is for Jews, by Jews, with the support of the vast majority of Jews in the world. The way that they have to deal with that is by lying, by saying, well, actually, most Jews don't support this. Well, actually, the character of this state, this ethno-state, isn't Jewish supremacist. It's not for Jews, by Jews. It's actually something else. Because I believe that there's something so innately special about Jewishness that I have to deny reality in order to allow myself the permission to be against Israel. And this is a very damaging notion, for reasons I'll get to in a second, right after you listen to them making the end of their point.
Israel wants you to look at the thousands of years of Jewish persecution and associate that with Israel's stated purpose for genocidal conquest in the Levant region.
Genocidal conquest in the Levant region, for whom and by whom? For Jews, by Jews, man. It's just like how the US was a white supremacist state for whites by whites. Why does it hurt you so much to acknowledge these facts? But here we get to the point, right?
That's why part of Israel's propaganda is all about how its critics are anti-Semitic. And in my opinion, that is a deceitful and perverted deflection, because it tricks gullible fools like BadEmpanada.
Jews say. So I've been tricked by Israel into believing that it's a Jewish state? Is that really your argument? Jews say.
Yes, BadEmpanada. What are they saying? Stop.
Oh my god, look at the cool clip of me smoking weed. Oh my god.
Anti-Arab Muslim hate group. Didn't you make a video about how anti-Arab Muslim hate is the new anti-Semitism? It seems like they fucking got the message before you did. Is he like a toddler where he can only
look, it's an anime laughing. Oh my fucking god.
read 2 words of a fucking sign? And again, this is not about defending them. This is about BadEmpanada's hyperfixation on Jews to the point to where he misses the fundamental point in which these protesters are making.
You'll notice across BadEmpanada.
Okay, so do I miss the fundamental point that they're making there? No. In fact, I have talked extensively about how the point that they're making is bad and harmful to the pro-Palestine movement. I have multiple long videos on this where I talk about this specifically, and I explain this. You would think that you would maybe present those arguments to show what you're actually arguing against, rather than just saying that he's been fooled into believing that Israel represents Jews, rather than the actual argument that I make, which is that it doesn't fucking matter if it represents Jews, because there's nothing special about Jews that means they get to have an ethno-state if they vote amongst themselves that they get to have one. And also on top of that fact, which is the most important one, that most of them do in fact think they should have an ethno-state in Palestine. So it's doubly important that you don't base your opposition to Israel partly or wholly on the idea that Jews are actually against it. Because if you did, you'd be in a lot of fucking trouble. And someone like this very much does, which is why they're so fixated on this point. But I mean, we had an epic ownage meme, right? The anime girl laughed at me, so I guess I lost. So I have a whole article on Jewish exceptionalism that is specifically about this, and that explains why these sorts of arguments are flawed and really harmful. This one on the George of Patmos Substack is called Fight Jewish Exceptionalism. Highly recommended. So here's a quick summary of this article, which directly refutes this talking point, in which they don't even try to deal with. Rather, they just talk smugly and put memes on the screen and completely lie about what I'm saying and just avoid the argument entirely. To again, make it like a moralistic individual thing. Like, why would you attack Jews who are for peace? How dare you do that? It's like the same thing with Chris Smalls. They know that they can't actually deal with the wider argument if they represented honestly what I'm saying, rather than just constructing a straw man and attacking that. So it's just like an individualistic thing like, how dare you say anything negative or say that these Jewish people who are for peace might be engaging in a poor strategy that actually harms the pro-Palestine movement. So here's what I said, right? Israel proclaims itself as the representative state of the Jewish people, which carries out its actions to further their interests. This idea is foundational to its legitimacy in the West. The logic goes like this. Israel is Jewish. There is something uniquely special and legitimizing about Jewishness. Therefore, we must support Israel, even if it acts in ways that we would usually oppose. The standard response to this in Western pro-Palestine activism for many decades has been to contest the idea that Israel represents Jews. We spotlight anti-Zionist Jews and go to pains trying to argue that Israel is itself anti-Semitic for framing Jews as a monolith, etc. It isn't an exaggeration to say that talking points like these have been some of the most oft-repeated refrains among anti-Zionists, perhaps even the most repeated. Notably, such discussions are much less common in anti-Zionist circles outside of the West, including among Palestinians themselves. But this approach has achieved nothing. Worse, it's been quite detrimental, something that's corroborated by the complete failure of the Western anti-Zionist movement to achieve anything of consequence at all. Firstly, it accepts the premise of the claim rather than attacking it, reinforcing Zionist narratives in doing so. There is nothing uniquely special and legitimizing about Jewishness. But these standard Western anti-Zionist tactics accept that notion, tacitly or otherwise, that there is. Israel is inherently illegitimate due to its very nature, a settler colonial project based on the replacement of the indigenous people and their society with a new society run by and for those considered to be a part of the settler in-group. In this case, that in-group happens to be Jews, but this does not meaningfully change anything about the equation. It would be the same if Palestine was colonized by anyone else. Thus, discussions about the identity of the settlers are wholly irrelevant. At best, they are distractions. At worst, they lead us into accepting the core premise of pro-Israel propaganda, the notion that Jews are acceptable and that there is some special value in appealing to their wants, their needs, and having some of them on our side. And I say we need to attack Jewish exceptionalism at its very core by diffusing the absurd notion that anything about a group's identity should change how we approach their project to invade another people's land, destroy their society, and replace it with a new society for their own benefit. Not reinforce that notion by focusing our messaging on the idea that Israel doesn't actually represent the special group of people in question. Israel would be illegitimate whether it has the support of 100% of Jews, 50% of them, or 10% of them. No group gets to hold a vote amongst themselves on whether or not they can do settler colonialism. But the implication of this line of argumentation, whether those making it mean for it to be taken this way or not, is that Jews do. By arguing along those lines, we imagine ourselves to be diffusing Israeli propaganda, but we are actually accepting one of its core foundations. When the problems with this sort of strategy are brought up, one of the most common retorts is that, due to the prevalence of this sort of Jewish exceptionalism in the West, it's useful to convince people to turn against Israel. People think that Jews are special, that there is something uniquely legitimizing about Jewishness, that being anti-Israel is anti-Semitic, and so we have potential allies to gain by arguing that Israel does not actually represent Jews. But this is a lazy shortcut. It's detrimental as it would be to argue against race science, not by contesting its premise that some races are superior to others, but rather by accepting that premise and instead arguing that this still doesn't justify taking rights away from the inferior ones. Even if you manage to convince people that you're right, you still haven't dealt with the root problem at all, and there is huge potential for disaster down the road due to you leaving the problem of people still believing that some races are superior to others unaddressed. The same is true here. An anti-Zionist movement full of people who are left to believe that there is something uniquely special about Jewishness is a recipe for disaster. The root problem is with this premise itself. Everything else stems from it, and anything but attacking it head-on can only ever be a band-aid fix. And why is this important? I go on to explain, because it pushes people into going soft on Zionism. The Jewish exceptionalist premise is based on the idea that Jews are uniquely oppressed and perennially in danger to the point that it's practically innate to them. This unique oppression thus warrants unique exceptions afforded to them, which legitimizes Israel's otherwise unsavory nature and actions. Anyone who holds Jewish exceptionalist sympathies is thus primed to be manipulated into liberal Zionist ideas and solutions, and primed to be sympathetic to Israelis when working towards the best outcomes for Palestinians is often going to require us to have much harder hearts. If one believes that there is something special about Jews in this way, then when the time comes to take coercive actions that are sure to harm Israeli Jews and hurt the feelings of many of their Jewish supporters abroad, we will not be able to count on their support. Secondly, I also explain how it redirects the discussion away from what is actually happening and to whom. For example, people like this person right here are constantly asking questions like, does Israel represent all Jews? Is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? Do Israel's actions cause anti-Semitism? Is Israel harmful to Judaism? Does Israel act in line with Jewish values and tradition? Is Israel itself anti-Semitic? What can we do to fight anti-Semitism? And the issue with that is it's totally irrelevant to freeing Palestine. None of this fucking matters. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Palestinian anti-colonial struggle. It doesn't matter to Palestinians if Israel represents all Jews, or if it represents Jewish values, or if Israel's actions make some American Jew feel ashamed of being Jewish, or if it's anti-Semitism anywhere else in the world, or whatever. The equation for them remains the same. They are fighting a genocidal settler colonial ethno-nationalist project that wants them eliminated or expelled. How they fight this should remain the same, regardless of the identity of those carrying it out. But those of us in the West who uphold Jewish exceptionalism spend too much time and effort focused on these completely useless arguments, centered entirely around the oppressor group. And rather than being good and useful allies to the Palestinian people, this actually makes it harder for them to fight, as they need to be able to in many respects. And the Palestinian writer Muhammad al-Kurd explained this in an article that he wrote. He wrote, I learned about Hitler and the Holocaust. I learned about the nose stereotype, the poison wells, the bankers, the vampires, the snakes, and the lizard. And I learned that when speaking to diplomats visiting our zoo of a neighborhood, the settlers squatting in our home must be the secondary point of my presentation, second to an effusive denunciation of global anti-Semitism. And when my 80-something grandmother addressed these foreign visitors, I corrected her mid-sentence whenever she described the Jewish settlers in our house as well Jewish. That is a great example of what I'm talking about here. This semantic environment that we have fostered in the West by focusing so much on this shit because so many people in the supposed pro-Palestine movement are Jewish exceptionalists has a real effect on Palestinians themselves. And that is an example of precisely how. We have made a semantic environment where Palestinians, rather than focusing on their own struggle as the way they need to be able to, are instead forced to often focus on their oppressor and acknowledge their imagined victimhood before they are allowed to point to their oppression. And Jewish exceptionalism is the only reason why this immensely stupid notion is taken seriously. And I also point out here that this is just factually incorrect. Overwhelmingly, regardless of who is polling Jews, and this is something that is just intuitively true as well. Like, look at the Jewish community. If you have any experience in the broader Jewish community, the broader representative Jewish community, you know about their institutions, you know about the religious institutions, you know about, you've ever engaged with Jews in general, you will know most of them are Zionists. Most of them are pro-Israel. Some of them might be liberal Zionists, but they're still Zionists. But either way, this is also reflected in polls. Polls, regardless of whether they're coming from a pro-Israel organization or a more neutral organization, they all demonstrate the same thing over and over and over again. The vast majority of Jews abroad are Zionists, and that's not even to talk about the percentage of Jews in Israel who are Zionists, which is more like 99.999%. So overall, something like a minimum of 3 in 4 Jews are Zionists, right? And this poses a problem for you when your basis for being against Israel is tied to this idea that it doesn't represent all Jews or that all Jews don't support it. Because clearly, most Jews think it does represent them and they do support it. So what then, right? As I say here, if your argument is based around any implication, no matter how slight, that Jewish opinion for or against Israel could ever be what legitimizes it, then you are essentially making an argument against your own anti-Zionist position, as Jews worldwide overwhelmingly support the existence of Israel as a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. So yeah, that is my actual argument here. And her straw man of that argument is just, how dare you say anything negative about Jewish Voice for Peace, about a Jew protesting for Palestine and saying, not in my name. You are critiquing this broad systemic problem. I'm pointing to this person who I think is a morally good person. I think they are included in your critique. How dare you say something negative about this person? You are specifically attacking them personally. How dare you? It's turning a broad systemic argument about pro-Palestinian strategy into this individualistic, moralistic question of, do you think this individual Jewish Voice for Peace member is a bad person? How dare you say that? They repeat this over and over again. The entire video is nothing but this. It's absurd. Anyway, so if you want a broader, much longer video where I provide tons of examples on the Jewish exceptionalism thing, look at my video on my main channel, Jewish Exceptionalism, Liberal Zionism, Jewish Supremacy, How You Inadvertently Support Israel. It is, the most detailed thing that I've made on this, and, it covers the issue very well. It's way, 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 way more in-depth than this idiot is framing my position as. And let's look at their attempted rebuttal to those points, okay? Which they present as a reductive straw man. The forefront.
People are dying as a result of unchecked imperialist expansion and gentrification. But
gentrification? Do you even know what that word means? Gentrification means like yuppies moving into your neighborhood and driving up rents and shit like that as a result of that and pricing you out of it. What do you mean gentrification? Are you just throwing out words you've heard other people use? This isn't gentrification. This is fucking settler colonial ethno-nationalist massacre.
anyone with a thinking brain can piece together that these atrocities are the result of nation-states invading other countries to expropriate labor and resources, which is the most common thread in all of them. Israel's actions are defined by its settler colonial nature. How these nation-states...
Okay, and who are the settlers in Israel? Because to have settler colonialism, you need a settler group and you need a colonized group. And the settler colony needs to be run for the benefit largely of the settler group at the expense of the colonized group. Who is a settler group in Israel by law, by its very nature, by its conception? Jews. It's a state, an ethno-state by Jews for Jews, exactly as the original conception of the USA was an ethno-state by whites for whites. You can't just talk about Israel's actions being defined by its settler colonial nature while you erase the very fact that to have a settler colony, you need a settler group that is defined in some way by excluding others from it and including some in it. And in Israel, the settler group are Jews. It's a state by Jews for Jews. Why does this make you so fucking uncomfortable?
achieve their genocidal operations varies on what is at their disposal politically. On these grounds, there is no ideology that is monolithically universal within Judaism that explicitly promotes Zionism.
This doesn't matter. Why do you think this matters? There was no ideology within Europe, within white people in general, that explicitly, monolithically promoted white supremacy, nor was there even within the USA itself. And yet the USA was still a white supremacist state, a white supremacist settler colony, by whites, for whites. You seem to be the one who doesn't understand this. Like, you're so fixated on defending Judaism from Israel or Jewishness from Israel that you don't even get the point. You can't even honestly summarize the point. And you're invoking settler colonialism and other terms that you clearly don't understand, terms that necessarily require you to acknowledge that there is a settler group. And who is that settler group? By law in Israel, it is Jews and only Jews. Do you need me to put a fucking asterisk between that saying, some Jews don't support Israel. Some Jews aren't Israeli. Do you need me to put an asterisk next to me saying that the USA is or was white supremacist by saying that actually some whites don't support the US, or many whites even don't support the US? Do you? I don't think you do, but why do you need it in the case of Israel? Because you are a Jewish exceptionalist. Because you see Jews as special. Because in their case here, where this Jewish settler colony run by Jews for Jews is repeating the same patterns that played out for other groups in the past with their settler colonial projects.
The reason why it might be harder for BadEmpanada to explain that Israel is bad without centering the Jews in his critique is because that's exactly what he does. In my video, Do You Condemn Israel?, I highlighted...
Like, how do you not censor Jews when you're denouncing a Jewish supremacist, ethno-nationalist project for Jews by Jews? This is like saying that you shouldn't censor fucking white supremacy when you denounce US colonialism. Oh, it's so fucking painful.
Zionist leaders who also happen to be Jewish saying the most unforgivable shit ever. This distinction is critically important.
Yeah, that's because they are leaders of a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. And...
because Zionism cynically weaponizes the Jewish identity in its propaganda.
Again, them weaponizing the Jewish identity can only work on you if you think there's something special about it. I don't. I think that Israel is an ethno-state, a supremacist ethno-state for Jews by Jews, just as other ethno-states before it, or attempts at ethno-states were for certain groups, like the attempt at a Serbian ethno-state carved out of Bosnia. It was an ethno-state for Serbs by Serbs. The Japanese attempts at settler colonialism were attempts at forming ethno-states by Japanese people for Japanese people. The US was founded as a white supremacist ethno-state for whites by whites. Why does it hurt you so much to say this in the case of Israel when you're not along with everything else that I said there?
to accelerate acceptability for Israel's slaughter in the Levant. It is true that a lot of Zionists themselves are Jewish, but BadEmpanada is forgetting that Zionism as a political ideology can exist in the minds of all religions and all
How am I forgetting that? Why does this matter exactly?
nationalities.
It doesn't fucking matter at all what Jews think about whether it's okay to fight against Israeli colonialism. That might be harder, but it's the correct line to uphold, and if you want to get anywhere but a Zionist outcome, that's what you have to argue for.
From the former U.S. President Joe Biden being a Catholic Zionist from a young age.
How exactly does this disprove the clip that you just showed? How does Joe Biden being a Zionist disprove the clip that you just showed? Like, there are plenty of non-white people who support white supremacy. God, anyone who's ever used fucking social media has seen that. But the US was still a white supremacist ethno-state. The beneficiaries of the American ethno-nationalist settler project were white people. By law. Literally baked into the country's laws, into its practices, into its modalities, into its everything. In Israel, it's the same thing but Jewish supremacy. Joe Biden is a Catholic, sure. But for being a white Catholic man, Joe Biden cannot migrate to Israel. A white Catholic cannot get instant citizenship in Israel. A white Catholic cannot automatically move into a Palestinian house. A white Catholic doesn't have the privilege of brutalizing Palestinians consequence-free. A Jew of any color, any creed, does. The violence of the Israeli state is carried out by Jews for Jews, directly, first hand. The complicity of other Zionists around the world who aren't Jewish doesn't eliminate that fact, this clearly operational and very important fact that you have to acknowledge if you're ever going to be able to fight Israel, because how the fuck can you possibly fight Israel if you're squeamish about even acknowledging the fact of what it is, a Jewish supremacist ethno-state? Like, apparently the fact that there are other people around the world, especially in the West, who support Israel for geopolitical reasons and thus a Zionist, that means that Israel isn't actually a Jewish supremacist ethno-state run by Jews for Jews. Those two things are not at all contradictory. By bringing up one, you do not cancel out the other, and it also doesn't have anything to do with the clip of me that you showed.
Hey, what? The average JVP protest is the exact opposite of what we need. Their entire argument is always, we are Jewish, we are Jewish, we are Jewish, we are Jewish, we are Jewish. Isn't it special that we're Jewish? Doesn't our opinion matter more?
This is literally an example of this protest. A protest entirely based on we are Jewish and we are against this and practically nothing more.
Because we're Jewish?
Oh, look, there's a fucking meme of me smoking. Isn't this so epic? I'm proving you wrong here. What?
Remind you of Jews. What does this remind you of? Jews.
How dare you talk about Jews in regards to Israel, where Jewishness is explicitly core to the Israeli colonial project? And you're like, what? You talk way too much about Jews in regards to Israel, in regards to Jews protesting against Israel and saying they're doing so on the basis that they are Jewish. Why are you so obsessed with Jews?
What does this remind you of? Jews.
Epic meme.
You are obsessed with Jews.
Hey, you're the one.
Oh my god, I have to show you this.
This is unbelievably lazy analysis. The Jewish community, not just Jewish Voice for Peace, is competing with a broader, politically Zionist narrative that Israel is the Jewish state and that it was founded on the unique principles of protecting Jews from anti-Semitism.
The latter is what the Jewish community is fighting for, by and large. The Jewish community isn't competing against the Zionist political narrative. They support a Zionist political narrative overwhelmingly, right? You just lie. Like, this person is straight up lying, trying to frame like the Jewish community outside Israel is actually being anti-Zionist and combating Zionism when the exact opposite is true. So this is their rebuttal to me going over polls on Jewish opinion about Israel, okay?
He's claiming that the majority of Jews support Israel. However, he is doing a very surface level reading of both of
Here's
these
me
statistics.
smoking weed, I'm so cool.
The Jewish Policy Research surveyed 4,641 British Jews in this particular article. However, in a different JPR article titled How Many Jews Live in the United Kingdom, Jewish Policy Research conclude that the United Kingdom has a Jewish population of 313,000. That means Jewish Policy Research only managed to capture the consensus of less than 2% of the Jewish population.
Do I have to explain what sample size is to you? Do I have to explain how in polls, this is how they always work. You take a representative sample of the broader population to indicate their beliefs. This is standard practice in statistics. It's widely fucking accepted, and you can't point to that and then say, well, this isn't actually representative of the broader consensus of Jews. Actually, they're all secretly anti-Zionist, and these polls just keep not capturing that. And this is besides the point, because I cite so many polls. The polls, whenever they ask a remotely direct question about support for Israel and or Zionism, the result is overwhelmingly in support of Israel among the Jewish community anywhere in the world. It's not like I'm just taking one poll, right? Because one poll might not be indicative of anything, even though not for reasons of sample size, okay? 4,000 is a perfectly valid sample size for a population of 300,000. Perfectly valid. So just to provide you with a little bit of an example of what I mean here, so in this article on California Tech University, for example, where they explain how sample sizes work, they say that a sample size of just 1,000 to 1,500 people can be enough to estimate national opinion in the United States. And that is for a country with more than 300 million people in it. So a poll of 4,000 Jews out of a population of 300,000 in the UK is actually a sample size with a really, really, really high level of confidence. It's a very lopsidedly high sample size compared to the norm. And such a sample size can absolutely be considered extremely indicative and accurate. Here is an article on the University of New South Wales website, for example, where they talk about this similarly. In Australia, a poll was conducted of 1,700 people regarding their intention to vote in the national election. That's a poll by Newspoll, which is one of the most respected polling organizations for politics in Australia, a country of more than 20 million people. And that was considered a sample size with an acceptable margin of error of around 3%. Now, a sample size of 4,000 out of 300,000 is a whole lot better than that. So yeah, you're just a fucking idiot, man. Come on. Now, I have cited this article many times by Tariq Nicholas, Jews Are Not Oppressed, The Myth of Systemic Anti-Semitism, and this article has many polls in it, though it is not at all an exhaustive sample, like a dozen of them all showing the same thing. Overwhelming Jewish support for the existence of Israel as a Jewish ethno-state. So not only do you not understand sample size, but you are ignoring the compounding evidence. These polls have been reaffirmed time and time again by other polls, whether they come from Pew Research or some other organization, all reporting the exact same sorts of results that indicate extremely strong Jewish support for Zionism. And trust me, if you look at the institutions themselves, oh my God, it's even fucking worse than it is among the individuals. The individuals, it's like 75% minimum support for Zionism, right? The world over, and that's being generous. When you count Israelis, it's probably like 90%. But the institutions, oh my fucking God, 99% plus, easily. Like, this is just someone doesn't know what sample sizes are.
Not to mention that JPR is a British organization whose sample size is specifically British Jews. Hardly
Yes, I'm glad you zoomed in your face when you thought you were making a great point here.
Capturing the totality of the Jewish consensus. The gap in the Pew Research statistic is even worse. Pew Research surveyed a measly 1,941 Jews out of a U.S. population of 7 million.
That's a representative sample. It's especially a representative sample when attempts to do the same poll with a new cohort of people result in more or less the exact same results over and over and over and over again. The margin of error in these sorts of polls is nowhere near enough to change a poll that demonstrates, for example, that 80% of Jews support the existence of Israel, to what you want us to think the reality is, where supposedly most Jews are actually against Israel. Not even close. The variance is like within a couple of percentage points or even decimal points. Never to that degree. So they are perfectly fine to cite. The sample sizes are fine. And it's not just the individual single polls that we're citing here. We are citing the exact same sorts of results that happen over and over and over and over again. This person is just a fucking moron. And the thing is, I guarantee you that if these polls indicated the opposite, she would be citing them. She would be citing them verbatim, uncritically. She would take like one single outlier poll that is contradicted by literally 50 others and cite that as proof that Jews are all anti-Zionist. This is just bullshit. It's someone just willingly misrepresenting fucking everything. Or maybe I'm maybe I'm giving her too much credit and she really is dumb enough to not understand what a sample size is and what a margin of error is. And that this is just how polls work, and they are actually quite good for this sort of thing. Now, I want to bring up probably the funniest thing in this entire video, which honestly, I don't even know how this is possible. Now, if you know anything about Argentina and about me, but especially just about Argentina, you're about to be hit with incredible whiplash. Listen.
This leads us to reveal the final pillar of BadEmpanada's political ideology, Peronism. If you've never heard of this...
What the fuck? What? Oh, Americans shouldn't be allowed to talk about anything. What the holy fuck are you talking about? BadEmpanada is a Peronist. This just sounds like an American throwing out like a negative sounding term that they've heard in passing at someone. And finally, BadEmpanada has been decoded. He's a Peronist. Finally, everything makes sense now. He's a Peronist. Now, Peronism is literally nothing but generic, sort of like third world economic nationalism at its core, at least in most of the ways that it ever manifested. The Peronist movement in Argentina, as its most significant factions exist today, they're just like third world nationalist. Third world nationalism is in like economic nationalism, like anti-imperialism. Social democrats, more so than anything else. And this is presented as a core pillar of my ideology, Peronism. Specifically Peronism, like something that is just a fancy Argentine word for economic nationalist social democracy in the third world. Okay, great. So I'd like to announce to everyone, probably especially to the surprise of my Argentine viewers, that I'm a Peronist. I'm a card-carrying Peronist. I love Lieutenant General Juan Domingo Perón. I have photos of him just out of frame on my walls. You'll never see them because all you'll ever see is the white wall. And it must be because I'm a white supremacist. Why does he have a white wall? Why isn't it a black wall? Have you ever thought about that? BadEmpanada is just an anti-black racist. Honestly, that's clear evidence of that. He has a white wall, not a black wall. Oh my fucking God. But yeah, BadEmpanada is a Peronist. He loves the Lieutenant General Juan Domingo Perón. That's the core of everything. We've got into it. We've learned why BadEmpanada makes arguments that you cannot actually deal with on their merits, and thus you do nothing but point at people who you think are exceptions that disprove the systemic argument that's actually being made, while being like, why did BadEmpanada personally attack this virtuous individual? But yeah, that's probably the dumbest video I've ever seen. How the fuck is this possibly 4 hours long? And how would you possibly have so many moments where you put epic memes on the screen and zoom in on your face as if you think you're making an incredible point and what you're saying is actually just incredibly fucking stupid? Anyway, thank you very much for the content. I hope it was worth however long this train wreck took to make you, and how embarrassing for FD signifier and deculturation that they posted in the comments praising you for no reason aside from the fact that you attacked someone who responded to their arguments and refuted them. Very fucking sad that this is what the American YouTube left is.